Kia ora everyone, today I'm very excited to be covering a LEGO Marvel set that I have been hunting down for years now. This here is set 76039 Ant-Man Final Battle, which released to tie in with the release of the Ant-Man movie from, Jesus, 10 years ago. This here is a 10-year anniversary for the set. 195 pieces in total, so rather small, 3 exclusive minifigures, and really, only Scott Lang would be re-released with different variants later on down the line too. Like I said, the set here released in 2015, but for the price of $20 USD before tax and $50 NZD here. In the aftermarket space and in brand new condition, this is listed at the price of $128 NZD, or in open condition, a little bit over $80 NZD. I managed to get mine for 30 bucks from the exact same person who recently sold me the Captain America tank truck set, which I also really love, and you can check out that review right here. The set overview is very simple. It's the build of Ant-thony from the movie, who was kinda like Scott's pet buddy, but the LEGO group also thankfully felt like being cute here with this release, so they also included brick-built models that resembled LEGO elements. I am a sucker for stuff like this. I may be revealing how easily persuaded I am with stuff like this, but I wish LEGO would do this more often. Brick-built models of pre-existing LEGO stuff is awesome, and it makes for some really great display models. Ant-Man was a hotly anticipated movie released for me at 15 years old, Lord have mercy, but for some reason I skipped out on this set. This released at a time during my LEGO period where I began really focusing on other hobbies, gaming, and I only picked up the monumental releases that would really mean something to me over the next few years. So The Simpsons, Force Awakens, and Tron LEGO Ideas I remember basically being the only things I picked up. Also LEGO Dimensions, because gaming. I would eventually end up getting Ant-Man a little bit later on with the Ant-Man and the Wasp set, which wasn't nearly as good as this thing here, just based on the inclusions alone. This 2015 release is something I think worth talking about though, because it was the first time that we began to see a shift in the LEGO Marvel MCU releases. That's because this here was the first MCU movie to receive just one LEGO set. Now, movies like Winter Soldier and Thor 2 were skipped entirely, and I still don't really know what happened there, so at the very least this movie was faring better than those two, but this would eventually become somewhat of a standard. Movies like Captain Marvel, Doctor Strange, both of them actually, even the Ant-Man sequel, would only have one set released, and thankfully, the best part was they were always affordable. So let's get started here and take a look at the interesting side stuff first. For me at least, the appealing factor for why I bought this all these years later. We have a side build with some ants and some really great brick built designs of some LEGO pieces. The ants there are dark blue, and it's the exact same piece from the Indiana Jones line, the Crystal Skull releases to be a bit more specific. The ant is a rubber-like hardened plastic and a special mold too that I don't think is used all too often. I always loved the ants piece when I was a kid in the indie line, so it's cool to see them again. It has me feeling all nostalgic when I'm already feeling all nostalgic. And then the set also includes the infamous Super Jumper, which we have covered on the channel before. Quite a few of these superhero sets from this era had these, and they stuck around for some years too. For those who don't know, basically the jumper could attach to a minifigure and you'd be able to make them fly in the air. Controversially, I actually think these things are kinda cool. I think a couple people do, but I know a lot of people really hate these. They were looked down on because of reports of damage caused to the minifigures. See, as I try to remove the minifigure there, the clutch power that these things have is insane. So the trick is you have to bend the minifigure downwards and then they can come clicking off. I think regardless of how you did it though, you were always causing stress on the minifigures. Now the images I've seen on the internet that showcase damage are like minuscule, very tiny amounts of damage and warping and or changes, but nonetheless they were still damaging, warping or changing the pieces. I was always in the mindset though that it didn't matter how I got the figures on or off the jumper, flinging them around like this was bound to cause damage one way or another. As for the build, it looked to me like a keyring or something, but I think that's purely just by accident. It's a launcher type set, so that you can send those screws flying. You see down below we've got a red and yellow brick there as actual pieces included there for scale. I read online that people said the idea could be Ant-Man's holding them and then can shrink down to be smaller than them, which I think is a really cool idea for the play of the set. I don't know about you, but looking at this really made me want to take the bricks off and try to connect them together. However, you're immediately let down by the fact that the build does require these parts to be connected together. These are actually built into the display, and they can't be separated or interacted with on their own necessarily. Well, the yellow one kinda can, but it's got all those extras attached underneath it. The red design there's a bit easier to break away once the yellow brick has been removed from the build. And they use stickers there for the top of the studs, which are just placed on disc-like pieces. As for the screws, the builds use studs and discs, and they look like bolts from Ratchet & Clank. stick a detail at the end there too. You place the screw in this life preserver piece there, and you can hit the other end of the yellow brick to send the screw flying. I do miss both of these shots here embarrassingly, but you know, you can send the screw flying. But what better time than now to take a look at our next build. Brick-built animals or insects or creatures are a staple in LEGO, and the giant ant has some pretty cool features about him. He appears rather large too, and he uses some pretty cool insect-like pieces that are used for spiders, and ball joints on the wings there for a free range of movement. The head there is also on a small ball joint, and the details involve some pincers and studs for the eyes. The movement for the legs there is quite static, but there is a bit of movement with this hinge piece up here for the back end of the ant. It's definitely not the most versatile build for a rideable creature in LEGO. All of the ant's legs here are on axles and Technic pegs so that they can stay still at all times. If you wanted to, you're able to make some slight changes to the display, but this means the ant won't stand up anymore. And actually, I'm told that the set was delayed due to a stability issue with the build. They had to increase the piece count slightly, and I think it might have something to do with the legs. My guess is that the weight of the body made it difficult for the legs to stay up, so switching to these types of static pieces makes the build a lot more secure. Let's talk about the wings there. This type of material that LEGO use for things like wings do scare me when I'm packing a set away for storage, but I love these inclusions always. Here, I like them a lot, but I don't love how they're built onto the ant. The split seams detailing looks so cool, and the ball joint connection means you can freely make these move however you see fit, but to connect the wings to the bricks there, you have some Technic pieces that bring them together, and that's cool and all, but then there's a lot of leftover stuff sticking out from the wing. It's not that big of a deal, I just don't love that kind of execution. The minifigures here are all standouts for the LEGO Superheroes line, besides some weird choices that are used for under the helmets. All of these figures here remained exclusive like I mentioned earlier, even this specific Ant-Man figure remained exclusive to the set alone. First up here is Scott Lang, aka Ant-Man, played by Paul Rudd in the series, which was a pretty exciting minifigure to have releasing. This figure was great, but unfortunately we do have some accuracy problems. The red and black printing looks awesome to me, and I always just really liked that suit, even though I know a lot of people don't like most of the MCU suits these days for the over-top level of detailing. The helmet on its own does look really cool, and a lot of effort was put into making that thing look good too, because it's actually a dual molded piece. There's some red translucent visor printing on the inside of the helmet there, with some visual aid on the sides too. The issue here is that Marvel changed the design during production. On screen right now you can see here the concept art stage of what the base design was looking like, and then you can see on the Empire cover there the official released and final product. Interestingly, LEGO nailed the design for the torso though, which does copy the official release quite well, but the helmet doesn't match what the MCU ended up going with. His mouth isn't exposed anymore in the helmet, so seeing that the LEGO minifigure has this at release was a little disappointing. The only reason this is now in retrospect something worth discussing is that LEGO did have the opportunity to fix this with Civil War and Ant-Man and the Wasp. Now for Civil War, they decided to release a brick-built figure of Giant Man, and he actually featured a brick-built helmet that was pretty accurate weirdly enough. And for the sequel movie of Ant-Man and the Wasp, well, they were just feeling lazy and they reused this exact same helmet piece, which was a problem. We're unfortunately yet to have an Ant-Man figure release with an accurate design. When those in-game sets released, they did give a nice update for the helmet, which kind of matched the style from the movies a bit more, but Ant-Man in that set came with the white spacesuit thing, so it's been 7 years since we had an actual Ant-Man minifigure. I've been talking about these differences for too long now, let's take a look at underneath the helmet. Underneath here, this is what the likeness is that they gave to Paul Rudd, with a very simple smirk there on one side and a worried or confused look, which feels a bit more in line with his character in the movie, I would personally say. Here's a quick look at what that expression looks like with the helmet on. I would say that I like this one a bit more than the smirking expression, but really, I don't think any face print works for him anyway. Unfortunately, none of the headpieces used in this set are exclusive for these characters. All of these heads appeared in multiple other sets. Scott here is using Ezra Bridger's headpiece from the LEGO Star Wars Rebels line, which was already bad enough considering how whitewashed some of those minifigures appeared. Paul Rudd would have a hard time with minifigure likenesses too, when all of his releases featured headprints that were used for other, interestingly younger characters. Here he is compared to the Ant-Man and the Wasp release, which uses headpieces prominently used for Spider-Man. You can see that the colors retained the same and the helmet too, but the design for the torso is a bit different, not by too much though. I still think if you had at least one of these two, you'd be pretty sorted for a definitive MCU version of Ant-Man. The suits there are objectively different in the movies, but I don't think that that translation is too obvious here. And we should also take a look at that Civil War variant of Scott, in which he appeared as an amazing giant brick-built figure. Because LEGO didn't release a regular minifig for Scott there, this 2015 one was the best alternative that you had for being able to make him grow and shrink. The mask here is a lot more accurate in brick-built form to that 2015 movie counterpart, and that's funny because it's not accurate for the 2016 Civil War movie, but it's so weird that LEGO would do that. And next up here is Yellow Jacket, who in the film is played by Corey Stoll, not that you could necessarily tell with the minifig head underneath that helmet. The Yellow Jacket figure might be the best figure of this set there. He's got a really great backpack design there, which is brick built and contains some firing missiles on the arms there. The helmet is such a cool military-esque piece too, as well as that cool tactical like printing for the torso and the legs. He really does look like a scary wasp guy. The head print underneath though is very lackluster for me. The head has been used in 47 sets in total. LEGO, retire this piece at once. The head print there has been used for characters like Loki, Bruce Wayne, Superman, Stormtroopers, Jurassic Park Rangers, and so on and so forth. By the time of this release, it was only used in 8 other sets, so that's okay, but even then, it had already been used for Loki, so when I see this, I just see Loki. Reusing heads across themes is disappointing, but I get it. Budget cuts and whatnot. You gotta use the same headpiece from Harry Potter and Marvel, whatever. But reusing heads in the same LEGO line, to me, that's just kinda poor effort. Next up is Hank Pym, a surprise release for the set because he's not promoted on the box art anywhere besides the figure roster. He pretty much uses the exact same parts as Scott does, but all of which have been colored in black. Actually, he's pretty close to being the exact same prints-wise too. I don't think the camera picks up on this very well, but the printing seems to be really fuzzy on my torso for some reason, especially when I compare him to the others of the set. Now underneath the mask we have the same face used for Gandalf from LEGO Lord of the Rings, more so at the time the Hobbit sets, which were about to enter retirement, so the head was still in use at that point. It was actually the last time the head was used in a LEGO set. It's not a good Michael Douglas face print. In fact, going by the movie standards, Michael Douglas in that movie has a goatee. So this thing isn't even close to being accurate. It's a lazy inclusion. Interesting to see that LEGO haven't lost their ways all these years later. An angry expression on the other side, and here's how that face looks with the helmet on. Not really in line with the character, I would say. Also included in the set is a blank minifigure head, and I guess it's because Hank in the movie never actually wears the suit. There is a CG flashback sequence where Hank is wearing the suit, but you never actually see him or who's playing him under that costume. This blank head also means that you could have the suit on a stand like it's on a costume display, which I think is a pretty cool option to have. The box for the set here shows Ant-Man and co fighting on maybe a table or something. We only see Scott and Cross fighting here with the Ant, and the only indication of a third minifigure here at the front is in the character roster down below. Though up top we do see Hank chasing Cross, who is holding one of the bricks we have in the set. The back of the set does show some play features like the screw which can be fired at the enemy, and some extra ants included too. Some nice shots explaining the features which were hopefully all covered in this video. The instructions for the set there were your standard $50 NZD set manual type, yellow comic-like printing on the inside, which I'm more used to seeing in the Spider-Man sets than the MCU movie-based sets, probably just because I have more comic sets than I do movie sets. The back there shows the set all complete, and there we have the same gimmicks from the box that we looked at earlier. We close with the inventory list and a really cool ad for some other sets on shelves. This little wave might be one of the best small releases from the LEGO Superheroes line period. I adore both of the Spider-Man sets there, and I hope to get my hands on the Shield one in the future. And then for the back of the manual, it shows us the ad for what would be the Avengers video game, and some LEGO Club stuff there too. The winning pirate at the back there says goodbye. Overall, despite the issues I have with the minifigures, it is such a memorable set for the superheroes line of releases. They made the obvious. They made a giant brick-built ant for the Ant-Man movie, but the simple extra of buildable LEGO pieces really makes this one for me. It's always been a favorite of mine from the MCU, and I'm really happy I was finally able to get this. Like I mentioned earlier, I think the Ant-Man sets ended up dropping in quality after this one and the airport set from Civil War, so really I'm hoping for LEGO to amend things by releasing a really great Ant-Man set in the future. If you enjoyed this look at a LEGO Marvel Studios set, liking this video here and subscribing to the channel does help to support more videos like this one in the future. Thanks for watching everyone, ka kite anō, hope to see you all next time.